is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The iRacing V8 Supercars Official Series Championship makes its way to the hallowed grounds of Mount Panorama, 6,213 meters in length, and a frankly terrifying 174 meters of elevation change. This circuit is the icon of V8 Supercar racing, with corner names such as Hell Corner, The Dipper, and Forest Elbow, making goosebumps grow on every motorsport fanatic. Last night we had the V8 Scops race take place, and after 161 laps, came down to a shootout between Trick Sim Sports and Evolution Racing Team. Tonight, we only scale the heights of the mountain 32 times, but all that means is that there's less time to bounce back from any mistake and less reliance on strategy. Tonight, to win here, you've got to be brave, you've got to be fast, and you've got to respect this place, and maybe, just maybe, as the checkered flag flies, the mountain will be calling your name. I'm Bo Albert, alongside me is Zach Handler with Mr. Scott Fountain in the director's booth for V8 Online's coverage on the iRacing Esports Network. Zach, qualifying's underway at the moment, and there is quite an interesting name at the top of the timesheets.
Yeah, absolutely. Cooper Webster has been putting in a lot of practice, obviously, because he has just managed to pip Sam Blacklock at the moment by just over a tenth of a second, and Sam Blacklock was looking very solid in the V8 Scops race yesterday. Obviously TTR, very established V8 team, and having a really good setup for this track. So the fact that Cooper Webster has been able to put himself up above Sam Blacklock at the moment is very high achievement, especially considering how close we are to the last round of Scops. And it's good to see a strong grid forming up this evening. Lot of people who we saw in the race yesterday, but not Forzan Al-Nabi or Ross Rizzo. They obviously taking a little bit of time to maybe soak in everything that went on for them yesterday.
And with having V8 Scops just last night as well, it is such a close field. 1.3 seconds is all that makes up your top 24 cars, and 1.7 with Scott Larnack making his way into P25 as well. So there's so many drivers that are so close in this field. So any little margin you can make at any point of the circuit has a big result in lap time, as Griffin Gardner, one of the last few drivers to make his way across the start-finish line on his second lap, hard braking into the chase, using a lot of the curb on the inside. 2:05.6 at the moment for him to beat is his current best time, and if he finds just 200ths of a second, he makes his way into the top 5. If he finds just a bit over 2 tenths, he gets himself onto the second row of the grid. That's a huge moment on the curb, and around Griffin Gardner will go. But that was some kind of airtime as we finish qualifying, and it will be Cooper Webster on pole position. So just in a second, we'll run our way through the grid for what will be 29 V8 Supercars, and they'll all be led away by Cooper Webster, with Sam Blacklock, reigning champion and race winner of round 1, on the front row as well. Synergy Sim Racing's Jordan Ross on the second row, with Brady Myers for company, with Brett Loxton making it into the top 5, with Griffin Gardner scraping through for P6 and barely keeping his car on its wheels. Jason Bentz kicks things off from P7 with Corey Preston, Thomas McMillan, and Ross Rizzo, your top 10.
Yeah, Ross Rizzo actually is on the grid. My mistake from before. But Emily Jones will take us out from position number 11. She'll line up against Scott Szlosky. Leon Tander out of 13th position alongside Thomas Hinz. Brian Borg will start from 15th position with Riley Blythe, a very feisty contender here, looking to make his way forward from 16th position. David Lord will start out of 17th next to Adam Highland in 18th, pardon me. Michael Cracknell Crackers will start out of position number 20 with Mario Vlasic starting from the top 20 position.
Chris Coxhead kicks things off from P number 21 with Andrew Zaxton, Greg Sharp, Jeremiah Morton, and Jamie McKnight, your top 25, and they were all within 1.3 seconds of pole. So a close field, and just behind there was Scott Larnack, who had wheel issues in the 1000 yesterday. Miko Nyman and Chris D'Angelo and David Miller round out 29 cars, and those 29 cars are wrapped all the way around the final corner as well. So a huge grid, so you can't even fit them all on the front straight. But one driver that isn't on the front straight at the moment is Sam Blacklock, just trying to save fuel. 100% fuel restriction here tonight for 32 laps. But you're not going to get 32 laps out of a tank. So these drivers will have to come up with some kind of strategy as we get ready. Just 10 seconds away at the most from making our way into Hell Corner and the terrifying charge towards turn number 2 as we get ready. A bit of a bobble there from Cooper Webster as we get ready. Any second, we're underway already. The lights are out and we are flying towards Hell Corner. Great start from Webster, immediately into lead, not challenged at all as they funnel their way in. A bit of a challenge in the back as well, as I think Brett Loxton looked to the inside, but so far we're looking so good as they funnel their way now down this long straight. And this is where the chaos will more than likely kick off as they duck and weave. Blacklock looking left, looking right, side by side, over the crest as we head into the big braking zone. And there will be no challenge there, but in the background you can see they're Loxton under a bit of pressure as well. Likes of Jason Benson there, around the outside of turn number 2. A tricky move to make happen, but he's making it work right now as the field funnel their way into the cutting and really start the elevation. Start the rise up the mountain, which is hard to do as one of the ASM cars around the outside. That must be McMillan. Trying to make it work on Preston and can't quite do it on this opening lap. So he's looking feisty already. There's a few drivers funnel their way around. We have Chris Coxhead. We've got one of the TTL cars, the 17 in the wall hard as well. So that is a disaster. And we'll figure out who that is. That's David Lorden. Huge damage up on the wall. His day's over.
Yeah, absolutely. Very unfortunate for those two guys. And Scott Larnack, oh no, not Scott Larnack, but Nico Nymanen also looks like he is carrying a little bit of damage to his Ford Falcon as well. So unfortunate start there for the Finn. He'll have to try and recuperate a bit of time wherever he can, maybe get a little more straight line speed as he's coming down Conrod Straight possibly. But relatively clean start from most people up the front here. Is just see a little bit of a lockup further back in the field from Leon Tander as he was trying to pull it up behind Brian Borg coming on to Conrod Straight. But all the cars looking good as they are just about coming around to complete this first lap. Cooper Webster still holding on to the lead. Sam Blacklock still following very closely behind. Very good on the brakes is Blacklock as they come down into intake space there. Yeah, pardon me.
McMillan is actually going to go side by side with Jason Bentz. So they're getting pretty racy into the final corners. And McMillan wanted to get it done at the cutting, couldn't do it, but the final turn will work a lot better. But that's checked Bentz up on the exit, and here comes Emily Jones. Didn't have the best 1000, of course, had to get a substitute replacement co-driver as well, but at the moment, not able to make the move stick into Hell Corner. So Emily Jones relegated to the top 10 for now, but she started outside of the top 10, so she's making a lot of progress. So we're on board right at the moment, but just in front as well, we have two drivers taking it side by side. And that is the driver of Corey Preston, who's trying to get the move done at the moment on Griffin Gardner and gets the move done. But he goes a little bit wide into turn 2, just misses out on the camber, but makes it work as well. Doesn't lose any more spots than he needed to. So good little move there for Corey Preston as the drivers make their way over the top of the mountain at the moment. But Zach, this front pack is very close at the moment, and they are not letting Cooper Webster run away with this.
No, well, you can't let anyone run away too quickly here. As soon as you kind of lose that sniff of the guy up front, it can be quite difficult to claw him back. But Cooper Webster doesn't seem to have an outright pace advantage over these guys at the moment. As one of the TTL cars there, Brady Myers, just getting very much over the curb there. And Brett Loxton tripping over the curbs, blocking a bit of a break there maybe. Car getting very unsettled as he came down through the S's there. And he's been looking strong this season, Brett Loxton, currently sitting in 5th position. And he'll be hoping to make himself up the field following Brady Myers at the moment. And Corey Preston's going to be catching these guys as well. In fact, since getting past Griffin Gardner, he's already pulled out quite an advantage. Griffin now under a bit of pressure from Thomas McMillan, who's got a nice slipstream coming down Conrod Straight. We'll see if Thomas McMillan here goes to fire it down the inside into the chase. And very late on the brakes, down the inside, Griffin Gardner giving it a little bit of room, but unfortunately both of those guys lock up, and Griffin Gardner is kind of forced wide there to avoid some contact with McMillan, so Griffin Gardner now getting swallowed up by Jason
Brian
Benz,
Borg's around as well. And there was an incident there with Brian Borg as Riley Blythe fired it down the inside of the chase. Big contact, get a replay at the moment, and that collected one of the Synergy cars as well. And that was Leon Tander involved as well, so a little bit of chaos there, as we're also seeing Adam Hyland dropping down the order, as there's a big check up into turn number 1. All trying to get a little bit of space on track, but it's not happening. Michael Cracknell got one of those moves done. Recently departed Evolution Racing Team, so a privateer at the moment. A very solid driver though, lots of potential, and at the moment that potential is being used to go right behind the rear wing of Mario Vlasic. Gonna have to do it around the outside. We'll see if Crackers is willing to make it happen. He just doesn't quite go for it in the end, as Jay McKnight goes for a big move. Power move up the inside of Jeremiah Morton. Makes the move stick, but now look at, that's Michael Cracknell side by side heading into the cutting. He makes it work around the outside on Mario Vlasic, which is not a move you see all too often. So Mario Vlasic getting past there by Michael Cracknell. We'll see if Crackers can make a little bit more progress as the top 5 and the top 6, sorry, really continue to stay very much nose to tail.
Yeah, well, Michael Cracknell doing a good job at the head of that little pack there in a car running wide at the top of the mountain. That's one of the Evolution Racing. Oh, no, sorry, that was Emily Jones. And she just gave a bit of a bump to Ross Rizzo there as she was rejoining the track. And it was a little bit of an awkward situation there for both of those drivers. And I think they both did a very reasonable job of making it through there relatively unscathed. It'd be interesting to see if Emily gives that one off, but would have to rewatch it to really make much of a call on that. But she's made her way through on Ross Rizzo either way, and Griffin Gardner now hunting down Ross Rizzo and is going to get by quite easily, just given that pace advantage that Griffin had coming out of Forest Elbow there. Coming down into the chase, these 4 cars looking very tight. Ross Rizzo looking for something. Scott Solowski also trying to hunt in on the back of Rizzo there and make something work. And Solowski's got his teammate there and Thomas Hinz right behind him. And Thomas Hinz has been performing pretty well. Had a bit of a unlucky race yesterday in the V8 Scops 1000, so he'll be looking to make a few more positions up in this official race today.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking to the inside is Scott Slosky, but doesn't do anything with it on Ross Rizzo. So just tucking in at the moment and making sure this race goes full distance, because there's still 29 long laps around this fantastic Australian circuit. So lots of time left to make moves, as once again the leaders make their way up to the top of the mountain, and Webster and Blacklock just beginning to break away a little bit at the moment, as it's very close behind with the likes of Jordan Ross, Brady Myers and Brett Loxton, as they make their way into the cutting section, and Loxton getting right underneath the rear wing of the TTL Esports Commodore. So we'll see how they go. On board with Loxton now to make our way through the fast right-hander, uphill blind crest as well. Maximum commitment through this section of circuit, and just loses a little bit of time to the 2 in front, as now it's Brady Myers, and Ross actually gets into the wall, and that was definitely a contact that was not netcode. He slams that wall, so we've got to make sure there's no steering damage now on the Synergy Sim Racing car, as he absolutely plummets his way multiple stories down through the dipper right out to the wall as well. So it's not hurt his confidence, not hurt his commitment either. Still willing to get very close to the walls, but immediately Brady's just looking under the rear wing and now makes his way out of Forest Elbow, gets a little bit of oversteer as he tries to put the power down a little bit too early to get the run, but the slipstream down Conrad is very effective, and he might just have a chance under braking Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. Brady Myers now pulling out to the left, showing his intent. He wants to go down the inside as they come into the chase. He's going to use a little more than is possibly there and go very hard on the brakes. And Jordan Ross is just going to have to give that one up as Brady just flashes out there, having a little bit of a connection issue, and that possibly just caused Jordan Ross just to back out of that move a little bit there. Also behind Corey Preston, who's been doing fastest laps, just gets locked up on the grass there as he tried to go around the outside of Brett Loxton, who just didn't get the best run out of the chase, but both of those guys managing to hold on. And Corey Preston has been doing a good job to make himself up onto the back of these guys. Obviously, Corey having a rotten few seasons, the last couple of seasons we've had, but with a strong start to the season here, he could really look at having a nice position up in this championship later throughout the season.
In order to build a championship, you've got to finish races, you've got to score good points, and at the moment, Corey Preston has ticked all the boxes for this season. The only issue is that Sam Blacklock is second at the moment, and he won the first round. So for Preston, he needs to get a little higher up the field, but he's shown he's got the pace to do it. With the fastest lap of the race by over 0.2 of a second, and if it wasn't for that absolute scary moment into the final corner, which could have easily ended his race, he very well could have got a lot more time out of it on the last lap as well. So for Corey Preston, he's got a quick car. He was quickest in one of the practice sessions leading up to this race as well. So Cross Continental Motorsports have got the car figured out because they've got Jason Bentz in P number 8 as well. So all the cars are very, very competitive, as that's Thomas McMillan going for a bit of a trip through the gravel as well. But McMillan is actually closing up to this pack as well. So it's all checking up a bit behind Jordan Ross, and I've got to wonder if that's because of the damage he's got. And it's obviously going to hurt him in a straight line, but it might hurt him into Forest Elbow as well, as Loxton just nipping at the heels down there. And once again, Corey Preston! He's got himself into the wall on the exit, and that's a big moment sideways over the bump as well. And somehow, some way, manages to hold onto it. So great car control from Corey Preston, but it didn't need to happen. But we go back up to Loxton, who's closing and closing and closing. How late is he willing to break into the chase? The answer is very, but is it going to be enough up the inside, right up onto the curb as well? And very lucky not to drill into the side of Jordan Ross's door there. So close racing at the moment, but Brett Loxton not able to make the move stick. Now Thomas McMillan behind this pack, and Corey Preston just behind. And got to be careful not to damage his car, because he has a fast race car today. And we said that he's finished every race this season so far, but that was a moment that very easily could have ended this race number 2.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I know what happened there for Corey. He saw that Brett Loxton kind of got a compromised run through Forest Elbow, but still thought that he was going to get something on Ross, and I think he might have been looking for an opportunity down coming into the chase, and just got a little bit excited there. As now Brett Loxton once again, there's contact. He's hit the back of Jordan Ross. He manages to keep it on the track, but now they're both scrambling to get back on the power as they come up into the cutting, and Thomas McMillan is benefited out of that. He's just made up basically 3 positions in the last lap odd, and is now finding himself pretty much in 4th position.
Yeah, he's done a great job, hasn't he? But this has also brought Corey Preston back into it. But for McMillan, this is a golden opportunity, and he's already using it. Already built about probably about a 4-5 second lead, 10th of a second lead at the moment. So McMillan doing what he has to, and from where he started on the grid, 9th, he's found himself in a great spot. So we'll see if he can continue the form, make it keep working. But Jordan Ross right now in a bit of a sticky situation. He's just falling back a little bit. And he's a driver that really can take it to Sam Blacklock in this championship fight. And at the moment, this race might be having to be used as a drop round, as I was seeing a little bit of an incident for Greg Sharp, and his car is wrote off completely over the top of Skyline. A huge moment, almost went over down the mountain as well. Cars scrambling to avoid it as well, but Greg Sharp so lucky not to go flying off into the Mount Panorama hillside. And the Penrite car, well, he's going to need more than an oil change, unfortunately, Zach, but he's going to continue anyway, despite the car being torn to shreds.
Absolutely, and just noticing as well, Brett Loxton into the chase actually just gets past Jordan Ross as well. Very deep on the brakes was Brett Loxton, managing to finally clear that damaged car of Jordan Ross. So it'll be interesting to see how Jordan goes, if he has a bit of a draft effect, if that can keep him in contention, and he can possibly just follow Brett Loxton back up to McMillan, because Loxton's had some really good pace, obviously sitting up there in position 4, and it'll be interesting if McMillan can close back on Myers, or get up to Myers as well, who does seem to be struggling a little bit compared to Sam Blacklock and Cooper Webster, who are very close up ahead. Brady Myers has now fallen a couple of seconds off the pace, and McMillan's lap time's looking very good at the moment. And Corey Preston, I have to say, he's looking very wayward at the moment. I think, not sure if that car is going to last him the distance. Very quick in a straight line, but it looks to be very much on edge, especially when he's getting around other cars, just as we saw him coming up through this section of the track last time. He actually got it completely crossed up and nearly went into that inside Etihad wall there, which was, I almost screamed out, but he managed to hold it all together.
Oh, Emily Jones! And one of the ASM cars that's hit. They've had a big accident at the top of the hills into the Etihad signage you were just talking about. And Emily Jones has retired the car, and Thomas Hins doesn't look like he's going anywhere in an issue as well. So sorry to cut across you there, but we're getting a replay on screen now. And that is two very quick drivers out of this race. Hins into retirement. And I would dare say Emily Jones will be joining him in the pits as well. So what a nightmare for those guys, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and that's very, very unlucky there for Thomas Hins. And Emily Jones maybe just got on the power a little too early there, slid out the tail of that car and hit the wall as she was coming up through Griffin's Mount there and, Reed Park. And I mean, I'm sure we've all done that in a practice session before, but you really need to make sure that when you're going around here for 32 laps and you're in close quarters, that you just got to keep it within those walls. And unfortunately for Emily Jones, who's a very fast driver, not able to finish this race today, and unfortunately there for Thomas Hins as well. But that has promoted a few people from behind up into some higher positions, so they won't be too disappointed with that. But Corey Preston's now being caught back, or he's being held on by Jordan Ross fairly well, and they're just starting to fall a little bit away from Brett Loxton, who has pulled away from Corey Preston quite well and is starting to make his way up onto the back of Thomas McMillan. McMillan's still not quite catching Brady Myers as quick as we possibly would have expected, although he is the fastest car on track at the moment, and Brett Loxton is only a couple of hundreds behind him as well.
Yeah, those two are very close at the moment, setting great times. The only two cars in the 206 range, so they're really pushing at the moment. They're willing to get close to the walls and push the boundaries in this 32-lap race at the moment. But I just want to mention that Sam Blacklock has probably pushed the limits a little bit too hard, because I'm seeing damage to the front right of his car, just a little bit, just the broken fender, but it hasn't cleared at all. So I do believe that damage is there on his car. I'll just get you to confirm if that's on your screen as well, Zach, but that is going to be hurting him in a straight line quite a lot. And I saw Josh Muggleton in the YouTube chat as well suggested that Sam was probably fuel saving behind Cooper Webster, which is definitely an option that Sam has available to him behind the Evolution Racing Team car. But now he's not going to be gaining as much as he would have, because that is so much more drag than he would have had originally.
Yeah, well, I mean, interesting. I'm hearing you and Fonty both saying that you can see it. I can't see it myself personally, so that doesn't mean it's not there, though. If he does have that damage, though, it is going to definitely affect, as you said, his straight line speed. Being in the slipstream of Cooper Webster, though, he's been hanging around that 0.4 of a second range for quite a few laps now, and you know, it's probably a few tenths that he does save just being in that slipstream, especially around Bathurst in the last sector and in the first sector as we see them coming now through Hell Corner. Mountain Straight here is a great place to save quite a bit of fuel, especially if you have a draft such as the one of Sam Blacklock right now, tucked in really nice and tight. That Holden Commodore is Cooper Webster punching a very big hole in the air, and we just hear, I'm on board with Sam now, and he's just able to let off the gas about 50 odd meters, probably before Cooper Webster is. And you know, it's not a lot of fuel. You only might save, you know, half of a 0.1 of a liter of fuel, but if you do that every lap for 20 laps, that's half a liter. And when you're trying to put fuel in the car, that can be, you know, half a second as you're getting fuel into the car. And given that they're only separated by 0.3 of a second at the moment, that's a jump in the pit stop.
Yep, and well, there's a lot of places you can pass through at Mount Panorama, but the pits is always one of the easiest places to pass because it doesn't require risking your car all too much. Just requires risking if you run out at the final few moments in this race across the start-finish line. We've seen Sam Blacklock do that before, of course. The highly controversial finish at Sebring just a few seasons ago comes to mind as well. But they're doing a good job at the moment, and Blacklock just content to sit behind. So we'll take a little bit of a look through the rest of the field. And one battle I want to point out is position number 12 at the moment, led by Andrew Zackerson. And he has quite the train behind him, including Michael Cracknell, Mario Vlasic, Adam Hyland, and Jamie McKnight's not far away either.
Yeah, it's just starting to become a little bit of a bottleneck for these guys. Haven't seen Zackerson a lot myself personally, but there are a lot of really talented and drivers we see quite often in this series. Jamie McKnight just hanging off the back of that train slightly as well. So Zackerson doing a good job here to hold off the likes of Crackers, Vlasic and Hyland there. Hyland obviously in the meme machine. Very nice to see that car out there again. And Crackers now just having a little bit of a look, trying to force Zackerson into a bit of an unforced or a little bit of a forced error rather as they come through the chase. But Zackerson able to hold his cool, and Michael Cracknell's going to have to look for another way round. Scott Larnack, Leon Tander as well, just behind these guys, as Leon Tander actually now coming into the pits. So one of the first cars on the pit lane is Leon Tander, so we'll probably be seeing the pit lane open up for a few cars fairly soon, as I think more than anything the tyre strategy is really going to make an effect here. These guys started off doing 206s at the lead of the field, and now lapping a second a lap slower at this stage. Most of these cars are. So if you can get into the lap, you know, if you get into the pits a lap or two ahead of your opponents, you're going to be doing well. It's Michael Cracknell now having to defend heavily from, I think, Mario Vlasic, who's going to try and fire it up the inside of the cutting, as Michael Cracknell actually trying to go around the outside of the cutting on Zackerson, and that's going to be a fantastic move for Michael Cracknell if he can keep the traction on as they come up the hill. They're going to go side by side. Guys, you can't get through there. How are they going to do it? Zackerson just hanging the tail out. They're still going side by side. Guys, this is absolutely crazy. And finally, Zackerson just has to decide to pull out there because they're only going to go so much longer. As Zackerson under attack now from Vlasic, who's going to go down the inside at Skyline. No, and Vlasic loses the end of the car, but manages to very skillfully hold on to it there.
That was a huge moment over the top of the hill, and while this is all happening, we do have a retirements report, and it's a big one. Fourth place, Thomas McMillan has blown an engine. The only car that was really punching around the 206 margin still in this race. Blew an engine. He is out of this race, but this is definitely the battle to keep an eye on at the moment. They are playing for keeps at the top of Mount Panorama. They're not afraid of the walls. They're only going to be afraid of each other and what they're all doing, trying to get up the inside at every point of this circuit and trying side by side where it just does not work. But somehow they've all made it happen. And Cracknell now leads this pack. We'll see what kind of pace he has and if he can make anything happen. We're on board with Jamie McKnight as he works his way around this circuit. And, well, he's not in the best place for this battle. He's at the very back, which means that if there's any kind of chaos that will unfold on the next lap, he's in the danger point. And we're going to see that they're going to go side by side potentially down the straight as they're all getting very opportunistic with their track limits and just trying to dart, trying to get into each other's heads. As they fight their way now up Mountain Straight, the long crest, and try and use the slipstream to their advantage. It's all nose to tail. I don't think anyone's going to be too close. Vlasic might be the guy to keep an eye on into turn number 2, and indeed he'll look to the inside, but probably won't have the margins to play with, and he will indeed just keep it behind for now. So Vlasic, no way through at the moment. Zackerson, he's struggling a little bit with the car and just creating opportunities for those behind.
Yeah, I think they're all trying to get in each other's brains here. Zackerson trying to flare out on Michael Cracknell, and then Vlasic trying to flare out on Zackerson as well, as Hyland gets very close to the wall as they come through the uphill section now. Vlasic running very wide on the exit through there as well, using every little bit of space where we saw Emily Jones get into the wall before, but Vlasic just making it work. And Zackerson still holding on. A little bit of a gap forming now to Michael Cracknell, who's using that clean air to his advantage and just getting away ever so slightly, as Zackerson just slowing up a little bit through the dipper there, and Mario Vlasic just getting on the loud pedal that little bit too much, trying to get on the power, and just sliding the rear of his Holden Commodore as they come through Forest Elbow. Adam Highland in the Mean Machine getting it a bit wild as well, and Jamie McKnight just kind of holding back, chilling out for the time being. If something's going to happen, I think he wants to make sure that he's not going to be able to collect anything that does happen, because anything at the top of the mountain between those walls, if anything goes wrong there, it's just going to be absolute chaos, and he doesn't want to get caught up in that at all.
Yeah, and Adam Highland is going to create a bit of chaos himself as he has a big moment into the chase, and McKnight might just be able to take advantage. So we said he might stay out of trouble, but Highland is going to bail out of this completely in the Mean Machine. So McKnight up one spot, but we are getting cars into the pits. Recently passed by Jason Bentz, I believe it was Jordan Ross, but he's decided to come into the pits this time around as well. So a few cars beginning to take their time and their one and only pit stop right about now. And of course, they were doing 23 lap stints yesterday, so 21 laps to go. That's very much what they were expected to do, but as of that, at the moment, we're all just trying to see how this battle is all going to unfold at the moment, as we get our top few drivers now all working their way up the mountain for what is the 12th time at the moment. But no one really making any moves. It's all just strategic play, seeing who's going to pit and when, and what they're going to do when it comes to these pit stops. Are you going to short fill? Are you going to be a little bit risky with your tyre strategies? What do you do? We will all find out very, very shortly as we close up on the halfway stage of this race in just a few laps time. But at the moment, everyone's just sort of feeling what they have to do, just looking for any opportunity. Andrew Zackerson still under a little bit of pressure from Mario Vlasic, but that battle does seem to have calmed down a little bit. Cracknell has just pulled a margin out front. McKnight's just dropped off a little bit behind, so it's just coming down a little bit in this race, and this is the strategic part of this race, and it's all interesting to see how it will pan out, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, you can only fight for so long before something goes wrong. And had a couple of cars from various parts in the race pitting. So we've seen Jordan Ross, Adam Highland, Leon Tanner, and Chris Coxhead have all made their way into the pit lane, and now's the time when you just kind of need to focus and just get your job done so that you can have a good setup for the second part of this race. You want to be on the fresh tires at the right time. You don't want to come in too early. You don't want to come in too late. And a car that would probably be pretty interested in watching is Ross Rizzo. He always plays a bit of an alternate strategy, and they all made a pretty good call in the Bathurst 1000 yesterday. So some good experience in that Trick Sim Sports team. And if there's one car on the grid that you're going to look out for strategy, it's a Trick Sim Sports car. He's just off the back of Griffin Gardner and Jason Bentz here, plodding around in 8th position. He's moved up a couple of spots since the beginning of the race, probably due to a little bit of attrition as well, but a very consistent driver, and he usually likes to kind of you know, start relatively slow and finish strong. And so we'll be very much looking forward to what he can do in the second part of this race.
Yeah, those Trick Sim Sport guys love to throw a little bit of strategy into the works and just throw a bit of a curveball to what most are doing. So we'll wait and see if there's any tricks up their sleeve at the moment, excuse the pun. But Brett Loxton was one of the only drivers to come into the pits last time around, and he's got a little bit of clean air, but Mikko Niemanen is just in front of him, and he's in a very, very oversteery Ford Falcon at the moment, under a lot of pressure from Chris D'Angelo as they make their way into the cutting. So Loxton might not have the best outlap ever, but as most people are probably going to pit around the halfway stage of this race, might still get a few laps of undercut, but of course he's not going to be able to get the same advantage as he would have if he had clean track, because they're always going to get closing up in the final few laps on the newer tires as well. So that's going to be the issue for Brett Loxton, but we'll see what happens with the leaders here. We saw Sam Blacklock last lap around do a little bit of a fake into the pits as if he was going to dive in, but in the end decided not to and just stay behind Cooper Webster. We'll see if either of these two decide to blink and get the undercut advantage early now, but they're going to keep on cycling around. So all still strategy at the front of the field, all just waiting to see what the other is doing. We'll keep an eye on Ross Rizzo right now, see if there's going to be anything he decides to do. But again, everyone choosing to choose the long game at the moment, and with the traffic we have seen as Andrew Zackerson now gets passed by Jay McKnight, who has got past Mario Vlasic as well. So McKnight has had a great little run, and now Zackerson's got to defend into the final corner from Mario Vlasic. as it all gets extremely close, and they all get away with it as well. So McKnight having some great moves at the moment, making his way forward on the field from 25th on the grid. Now finds himself in a position number 10. So he's charging his way through, of course, still yet to take his pit stop. But that is a good amount of work for him, as Brett Loxton has now cleared traffic and is fired away, because there's a lot of gap now all the way up to Jeremiah Morton in the Lenovo Motorsports car. So Loxton, clean air is in the order for him, and he's got to take advantage now, just pumping quick laps, qualifying style laps. You need to see him be the fastest car last time around, because new tyres are clearly quick. Fastest car last time around was 21st place, Chris Coxhead on a 207.3 compared to our leaders on a high 207. So the pace advantage on the tyres is definitely there. Loxton has to capitalize, especially if Cooper Webster is holding Blacklock up just a little bit.
Yeah, well, Brett Loxton managed to clear that traffic relatively unscathed, and he probably, I reckon, lost about 0.6 of a second trying to get past those guys. There was a little bit of a hold-up as they came into Forest Elbow, and just having to take the obviously shallower and less preferred line as they came through Murray's corner as well. So not ideal, but it definitely could have been worse for Brett Loxton if he had really gotten caught up behind them as he was, say, coming up or down the hill. That would have been a lot more tragic for his race. So definitely still in contention. He was racing with Brady Myers, who's lapping in the high 207s, a 207.979 last time around.
Oh, here we go. Oh, no, another fake from Blacklock. Blacklock's really just trying to get into Cooper Webster's head, trying to think of a strategy, but Sam Blacklock's friend, Brady Myers, will dive into the pits, and he's highly committed right up to the cone sideways, pushing every little bit to get every kilometer an hour before you're required to get down to 60 k's an hour, which feels like an absolute eternity trundling down this pit lane. And although the pit lane is very nice to look at, you're more interested in just finding your pit box and stopping on your marks, which Brady does do. But back to Mario Vlasic at the moment, who is just in a fight with Andrew Zackerson, who's taking more alternate lines down the front straight. So no way through for Vlasic just yet, and still got a bit of time to find before he has any chance getting moved on. But getting a bit oversteery out of Hell Corner would not do himself any way of good. So Brady Myers now, probably the driver to keep an eye on the most, because he was fighting up the front, and also where he comes out in relation to Brett Loxton. You can see Loxton is not far behind, so that gap has definitely closed since before the stop. So Loxton has gained time from this undercut, but not enough. And now Brady Myers is going to have much newer tyres for the rest of this race as well. So Myers really could be the danger man and throw a bit of a curveball to Sam Blacklock and Cooper Webster if they don't react soon.
And I noticed as well that Brady actually took about 1.2 seconds less fuel than Brett Loxton as well, which I believe to be close to about 4 litres worth. So that's quite a significant amount of fuel there. I wonder if Brady was able to do a little bit of fuel saving on that stint, which is why he just fell away from the likes of Sam Blacklock and Cooper Webster up at the front there. But it doesn't look like he's saving any fuel now, and neither does Brett Loxton. He's on maximum attack as they're now coming through Brock's Skyline, and Brett Loxton's been looking very strong. He does love this circuit. We've seen him put in some really good performances around here throughout other seasons of the iRacing V8 Supercars official series, but he does have a little bit of work to do to get up to Brady Myers, and the leaders are now in the pit lane. So we've seen TTR doing fairly well in the pit stops this year. ERT have always been pretty good with their strategies as well, particularly with the likes of Ian Ford and Ethan Grigalt. And I wonder if they're maybe just in the ear of young Cooper Webster, pardon me, as they come into the pit lane. So we'll see if they can hit their boxes nicely as they're up on the tire jacks, getting that fuel put in the car. And I think that Corey Preston may have come in as well into the pit lane. He has, so they come off the jack now. It's very close, and in fact, Sam Blacklock. Now, this is one of the little things about iRacing we have here, a little bit awkward as they're coming out of the pit lane, but it looks like Cooper Webster has been cleared by Sam Blacklock as they come down Mountain Straight, and that is a job done for a TTR car, as he's going to have to defend down into turn number 2 here, but not able to do it. is Cooper Webster. Now, he's been driving very consistently, I have to say. I've been very impressed with his drive so far. Now it's time to get on the aggressive front and, you know, put Sam Blacklock under all that pressure that he's been under for the first half of this race.
Yep, it's got to be a mindset switch now for Cooper Webster. He's got to get in the rhythm. He's got to get right underneath Sam Blacklock and not let him escape. So we're on board with Cooper Webster at the moment as we make our way through this very quick section of circuit right out to the walls. As well, as you can see, they're just about knocking the mirrors off as you make your way through. But for Webster, he's got to keep on Sam Blacklock. He can't afford for Blacklock to clear him and make a margin early, because that will just allow Blacklock to carry on and go and go and go. But the issue for Blacklock will be that Jeremiah Morton is just a few car lengths in front, and you know, we're still not quite at the halfway stage in this race. In fact, we'll be halfway at the end of this lap. So if for whatever reason Morton decides to stay out one more lap, that could really hurt Blacklock, who you can see they're taking alternate lines down Conrod, breaking the slipstream to let the margin grow just a little bit. Brady Myers has indeed closed the gap up quite a bit during the pit stop phase, but it's only in the region of about 2 seconds. It was about 3.5, but it's not quite enough for him to be in this fight just yet, as Webster late on the brakes into the chase, all over the curb as well, utilizing the slipstream to get himself a little bit closer to the Trans-Tasman racing car, doing a bit of lawn mowing as well. But indeed, the drivers of Jeremiah Morton will come into the pits, but Andrew Zackerson does not, and he's showed good pace in this race, but on new tyres for Sam Blacklock, I wonder if at the end of this lap, Blacklock might just have a little bit of traffic to make life a bit harder. But he has done a good job on this out lap, built a good margin to Cooper Webster, and Webster has a little bit of a margin back to Myers as well, but he has to be cautious, because that is not a gap to be comfortable, and Brady Myers in the slipstream as well. If Webster gets under the gap, if Webster gets under the rear wing of Sam Blacklock, there's every chance of this being a 3-horse race to the race win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sam might be lucky if Andrew Zackerson decides to pit this time round. Looking at the pace difference between those two guys, probably about 1.5 to 2 seconds, which is not quite the gap that's between them at the moment. It's about 2.5 seconds. So if Zackerson decides to come in this lap, that might make the race a little bit easier for Sam Blacklock, but it won't make it easier for Cooper Webster, and we would like to see Brady Myers getting in there as well. Now, we also said that Brady Myers may have been just doing a bit of fuel saving through that first stint so that he could really power his way through the second stint of this race, and if that's the case, we'll be seeing some increased pace from Brady, and so far the times for him are looking good. In fact, he's done his fastest lap of the race at 2:06.98, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually not quite the fastest lap of the race. That's held by Corey Preston, but it is faster than Cooper Webster and Sam Blacklock's fastest laps of the race, which are at 2:06.5 and 6:3 respectively.
Yeah, so really good pace there at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if their pace just gets upped a little bit, with this being their very first lap on new tyres. So expect them to throw in a good time and potentially challenge that time of Corey Preston. Of course, a bit more rubber laid down at the moment. The track grips up, more pace, as well as Griffin Gardner and Ross Rizzo dive into the pits this time around. So they will go on that slightly alternate strategy with a longer first stint and a shorter second stint. But already the leaders funnel their way through the final corner. So they'll not be in the fight for the race win here today. But maybe, just maybe, they can make a few more moves on the competition, as we still have Corey Preston with the fastest lap of the race. With Blacklock, it's a 2:06.3. Cooper Webster, 0.08 of a second quicker. And Brady Myers, the quickest car on track, with a 2:06.2. But we're just talking millimeter stuff here in terms of lap times. It's so close, and they're all just gaining a little bit by little bit on each other. But still needs something dramatic to happen if they're going to get a little bit closer. But it has to be said that Webster does look visually closer than he was last time around, and Blacklock not looking as pacey as he once did. So Blacklock not building the margin that he wanted, and Webster doing exactly what he needs to do, stick in the slipstream and make it work over the top of the mountain as well. You can see just how close they're playing with the wall on turn as well, as they head under the Fujitsu bridge and now plummet down the hill once again before rising back up to Brock Skyline as well. So very, very technical part of the circuit, requires a lot of commitment, something none of these drivers are lacking, right out to the curb for all of them as well, which can be a little bit dicey, can unsettle the car as well, as they now plummet multiple stories down close to the wall on turn, and especially for Cooper Webster, leaving nothing on the table. And Blacklock looks to have just pulled away a little bit over the top of the hill. But the good news for Webster is there's quite a long straight coming up, and he does still have the slipstream in this race sack.
Yeah, and Brady Myers will be hoping to get that soon as well. He's still looking very strong and is visibly closer, maybe not so much at the beginning than he was at the beginning of this lap. It's 1.3 seconds back to Brady Myers from Cooper Webster, but you know, Cooper was leading the beginning of this race. Sam Blacklock now leading. Sam's had a lot of experience leading these races. He's obviously our defending champion and won a few races last time out. Cooper Webster, not so much. Cooper Webster might prefer following another car, although it does have to be said that he did do a tremendous job in that first stint. Virtually didn't see a single mistake out of him, and on his second lap out, I did notice that he just took Murray's corner a little bit tight on the apex there, got it up on two wheels and had a bit of a slide. So one mistake in trail mode already for Cooper Webster, as Sam Blacklock trying to do everything that he can to reduce that advantage that Cooper Webster has by getting that big air punched for him. And Jamie McKnight now, one of the last cars out on track who had not pitted. In fact, he was the last car out on track who had not pitted, along with, in fact, Jordan Ross may be taking his second pit stop. In fact, he is taking his second pit stop as well as Jordan Ross. So Jamie McKnight comes into the pits as these guys still battling on their way up the mountain. Last time around, we saw a 206.4 for Blacklock, 206.3 for Webster, and Brady just dropping back off the pace a little bit, 4/10 off his previous best lap, and about 2/10 off these guys as well. Brett Loxton's also dropped off the pace quite a bit as well. His last lap around was a 2:07.1, and Corey Preston not really able to challenge any of those times either. A couple of cars are working together though at the moment. Looks like Jamie McKnight's come out just ahead of Mario Vlasic, who's been utilizing a lot of interesting lines across this track to try and make his way through what he would probably deem traffic, and having a few lap older tires than Jamie McKnight will not help Mario, but for this first lap, having that extra heat in the tires may help him. And as he comes down into the skyline here, he is looking very strong, and he is looking like he is in hunting mode on Jamie McKnight, getting ever closer to the rear of the Evolution Racing team. Holden Commodore in those bright orange and grey colors there. Mario Vlasic looking for a good exit, kind of manages to straighten it out through Forest Elbow just at the very last moment, but not ideal through the mid-corner there. And Jamie McKnight just weaving a little bit across the track, just trying to prevent Vlasic from getting in that slipstream as they come down to the chase now at 285 kilometers an hour there for Mario Vlasic as he jams on the brakes, and we'll have to find another way past Jamie McKnight. But as we said, Jamie on a little fresher tires, and will maintain that position for the time being as well. And Andrew Zackerson's also come out ahead of Chris Coxhead, Scott Larnack, and Jeremiah Morton, and looks like those guys are going to be in a little battle train as well.
Yeah, they are. Morton is very close behind the driver of Scott Larnack as they make their way away across the start-finish line to start their 20th lap now. So getting a fair way into this race, 13 laps to go. It is one of the longer ones, and the drivers really having to get a little bit more into endurance mode, especially after the 1,000 yesterday. So big workout for the drivers over the last few days, but they're all managing really well, and they're putting on a good show as well. But it looks like no moves to be told just yet, but Cooper Webster across the start-finish line last time around, down to 4.5 of a second, and that was also the fastest car on track by some margin as well. 0.2 quicker than Blacklock, 0.4 quicker than Myers, who has begun to fade just a little bit. So Myers no longer in this fight. It looks to be between Cooper Webster and Sam Blacklock, and Blacklock is definitely a lot stronger over the top of the hill. Again, the gap expands up to 7.5 of a second. The draft just allows Webster to close bit by bit, and once again will close that gap from 7.5, already down to 5.5, now down to 5/10, 4.5 already. So a very effective slipstream here at Mount Panorama, and under the brakes as well. So Webster definitely got pace and horsepower in the Evolution Racing Team Speed Cafe sponsored car. But he's not in any little battle at the moment, but I do want to point out Ross Rizzo. We said that he can be a little bit weird when it comes to strategy. Loves to throw a bit of a curveball from time to time, do something different. He had by a long way the quickest pit stop. Most drivers were around the 38-second mark, 39-second mark. Corey Preston, 41.1 seconds. Ross Rizzo, 34.3 seconds for the entire lane time, and only 14.8 seconds stops. That is nothing. That is almost 3 seconds quicker than the nearest quickest time I can see, which is Chris D'Angelo. So Ross Rizzo, we know he's good at fuel saving. That might just be put to the test here today as Blacklock pulls away a little bit last time around. The quickest car on track was actually Griffin Gardner, who closes in 1 second on the car in front, which is Jason Benz.
Yeah, and Ross Rizzo's not much further up the road from Griffin Gardner as well. So if he keep on punching on those laps, Gardner, then he'll be able to get past Jason Benz very shortly and also make his way up onto the back of Ross Rizzo and look for a move there as well. And Ross's pace, he's been out on those tires for a few laps now, sitting about the low 207, so definitely not lapping at the pace of the leaders, but he probably is, as you said, saving a little bit of fuel. I think he probably would have had to have taken a solid 8 liters less than most people during that pit stop. So that's probably around a lap and a half around this Mount Panorama circuit. Is extremely throttle heavy, especially with the amount of straights that we have here. But it was an interesting point you brought up before of as well with Cooper Webster and Blacklock, how Blacklock really seems to pull away over the top of the mountain. We continuously seeing Cooper Webster, with maybe the exception of this lap, he has fallen back quite a bit, really catching up in the final sector and in the first sector as well. And I think Bathurst is one of those tracks where you really have to decide one way or the other, just like some other tracks like Spa, whether you go very fast through the corners or you try to go for really good traction and nice straight line speed. It does look like these two teams have a different philosophy for the setup of the car. And Cooper Webster's already pretty much pulled in a 10th since the chase, even though he actually did just make a little bit of a mistake coming out of Murray Corner there, which has set him back a tiny bit. But he does seem to be really doing a strong job in the final in the first sector compared to Blacklock, who's just absolutely tearing it up as he comes across the mountain down.
Yeah, absolutely. And Blacklock's also getting a little bit feisty as well, just really aggressively trying to break the slipstream at the moment. We'll go back to Mario Vlasic though, who once again finds himself in a fight right underneath the rear wing of Jamie McKnight. So they begin lap 22, and Vlasic searching for other alternate lines in a turn 1, which is always interesting to see. Of course, to get in someone's mirror, you probably don't need to be that aggressive and all over the track. That might have just compromised his run into turn 1 as well. So Vlasic probably not going to get a chance into turn number 2, but very much holding on to Jamie McKnight despite McKnight's tire advantage. So he's not been able to escape, which is very interesting to see, as it's actually Brady Myers who was the quickest car last time around on a 2:06.9. So Myers coming back into this just a little bit. And interestingly, Cooper Webster has stayed with Blacklock this time around. We've seen the gap expand quite a lot over the last few laps. This time, it stayed around the 0.6 of a second margin. So all of a sudden, Webster's maybe found something out over the top of the mountain as Blacklock locks up into Forest Elbow. Doesn't hurt his exit though. In fact, gets a slightly better exit, I would say, than Cooper Webster. But maybe Webster's just found something. He's been behind Blacklock for a few laps now as he continues to try and break the slipstream down the straights. Webster's just picked up a little nuance that Blacklock does, a little bit of a difference in technique, maybe a line difference or using a different part of the road or a different, anything, just little margins sometimes add up. And Cooper Webster normally is about 5.5 tenths away at this point, only 4.5 this time around, lost a little bit on the exit of the chase, but found something. So Webster coming into this a bit more as we go from 10 laps to go, the double figures down to the single figures. 9 laps to go at the end of this lap. So it's going to get racy very, very soon.
Yeah, and I've also just been watching Jason Benson, Griffin Gardner, who have started to come together just a little bit. Griffin Gardner now being slowed up, I feel, by Jason Benz just ahead of him, and Jason getting very taily coming out of Murray Corner there. That might just open up an opportunity for Gardner, but he's not quite there. Just shows himself in the mirror on the inside, coming into Hell Corner there, showing the nose and trying to put off Jason Benz. But Jason's been looking very strong and holding himself in a very solid position there up in P7. Griffin Gardner, though, has times around previously been the fastest car on the track. Maybe just taking a bit of life out of the tires, trying to get past Jason Bentz here. Very difficult once you kind of come up past the cutting to do much. We saw a couple of cars going 2x2 as they came up the mountain, but usually it's not on. Griffin Gardner, though, not afraid to show that he's all game for anything, just showing around the outside. There's Jason Bentz, just gets a little bit of a slide coming through Reed Park. Maintaining the position, though, just sliding across the track, not looking super comfortable now. That car just not gripping up quite as much as he would like. Griffin Gardner using all of the exit curb there, just getting one wheel slightly on the grass and cutting up some dirt onto the track. Jason Bentz coming in nicely through the dipper, just sliding a little bit wide as he pushed the speed through that corner as much as he possibly could. And that might have just compromised his run through the rest of that little section there. Running a little wide at the mid-apex, at the mid-corner, pardon me, of Forest Elbow. But Griffin Gardner, despite having that pace advantage the last few laps, doesn't really seem like he's able to put a move on Jason Bentz here, who's just been putting his car in the right places at the right times. Although Griffin Gardner got a massive slipstream as he came down and into the chase. He fires it down the inside. There's a bit of overlap there. Jason Bentz is going to give him the room. Hopped up on two wheels, though, was Griffin Gardner, and he just had to use a little bit more at the apex there than I think he would have wanted. He's going to try it into Murray's corner as well, very late on the brakes, but Jason Bentz is just that little bit more committed, possibly too committed, as he just locks a brake here. Griffin Gardner's going to have a third stab at it, or maybe he's not. Just pulling out a little bit and tucking back in. He can go for another slipstream opportunity down Mountain Straight, and he will do so, tucking in behind Jason Bentz. Goes for the outside line for the next corner. Will he decide to come across the track and force Griffin Gardner into a very tight line? Comes across a little bit as they come over the hill, but not enough. Griffin Gardner goes through on the inside at turn number 2, and Jason Bentz is hung out to dry, and that is a position for Griffin Gardner. So we'll see now if he can break away from Jason Bentz, and Scott Zalowski's actually managed to catch up a little bit to Jason there, so he might have a go too. We'll see if Griffin Gardner can make his way up to Ross Rizzo, who's still potentially doing a little bit of saving at this point in the race.
Yeah, so Zalowski has had very good pace as well. So whilst they were all fighting, he's managed to take out over 7/10 of a second out of these two as well. But that's an interesting point with the Rizzo and how he's going with his fuel management with that very, very short stop that he did have. He's made no progress on the back of Corey Preston. So it looks like the top 5 won't be in the realms of possibility for the Trixton Sport driver today. But after yesterday's result, I'm sure he's not going to be too upset with himself. But he does have to be careful of Griffin Gardner, who will be closing up quite a lot. And already, you've got to say that he has made a massive margin on Jason Bentz. So very close as I'm seeing the gap for the race leaders down to a 1/10.5 of a second. Webster right underneath the rear wing of the Trans-Tasman Racing Commodore as they go through the chase now on the exit. And all Webster has to do at this point is keep on the bumper of the TTR car, because he will have every chance at making a move down the mountain straight and into turn number 2. And we'll see what the gap is as they cross the line. It was 5/10 of a second. It's just 3/10 of a second now. And with the slipstream, there's every chance of that gap being 0.00 under brakes into the next corner. It's a good run from both drivers, fairly equal. Blacklock, again, just weaving quite a lot. And he does have to be careful when the driver is this close. You don't want to be making too many defensive moves. And indeed, he has now held his line. He's just moving to the right. That's allowed to do. We'll see what Webster decides to do. And indeed, he just sticks behind for now. He doesn't want to get too racy. He's found his way onto the back of the TTR car, so he has found something over the hill. He's found something Blacklock is doing, and Webster is still a relatively young driver. Of course, he has experience in the real world, but he does have a very big future if he can keep learning off the quick drivers. That's exactly what he's doing today. We haven't seen him fight for wins all too often in this series, but today is his big break in this ERT Speed Cafe Commodore, and we'll see what he can do as he plummets his way through this middle sector of the track. And it's going to be very interesting to see as Scott Zalowski has actually made a move on Jason Bentz as well. So Zalowski using the pace he had to make the move stick, or maybe it's not the pace of Zalowski, but the lack thereof for Jason Bentz. It was a 2:09.5 for him, so he's really struggling. And Michael Cracknell is only a couple of seconds away. In fact, it's a pretty big margin, but Jason Bentz might just be in a little bit of trouble if this continues the way it is, as Blacklock exits Forest Elbow and has now built a half a second margin again. So Blacklock just getting a little bit closer to the walls, risking the car a little bit to build the margin once more and put the afterburners on to escape the grasp of Cooper Webster, who continues just to close up with the slipstream once more. And it was an interesting debate I did see in the YouTube chat as well, just deciding if Webster was indeed just using the slipstream and taking it easy over the hill to save tires, or if he really was just trying to stick with the TTR car and desperately doing everything he could to hold on. We'll wait and see how it goes as we head to just 7 laps to go as we start lap 26 in any moment's time. So Webster, he's had 1 lap onto the rear wing of the TTR Commodore. How's he going to go for the second lap?
Yeah, well, he's looking very strong. Very minimal mistakes, little bit of oversteer just in little parts of the lap. And that's the way that you can tell that he's really just on the edge of what his car is possible of. And I'm sure that both of these guys are, because they've stretched their legs out over the rest of this field. And Brady Myers, it's really quite a bit of a shame that he's starting to fall off now, half a second a lap slower at the moment, but he's been doing a really good job as these guys just break away slightly. We're just going back now to Jamie McKnight and Adam Hyland, who are rubbing together as McKnight on the inside line there manages to get his way past Adam Hyland, who is in the mean machine, and just having to get pushed out a little bit wide there. See if he goes for something as they come into turn number 2. Tries looking for the outside line, does Adam Hyland, forcing Jamie into something he doesn't want to do, but Jamie McKnight is holding it strong in that bright orange ERT Commodore, and he'll now look towards catching himself up to his ex-teammate Michael Cracknell, who's currently holding the final top 10 position and has been looking pretty strong throughout this race. He's up 9 positions, in fact, which is very good momentum for him, and probably more a position that we would kind of expect him to see. I did think that he was quite off the pace qualifying down in 19th position, so being able to do a very good job to make his way forward. But now he will have to watch his rear mirrors in the next few laps for Jamie McKnight. Jamie McKnight's actually been putting in some decent laps throughout this race in the mid part, actually getting the fastest car on track some laps around. So pushing the car is Jamie McKnight. He'll catch up in due course. But Jason Bentz has also just fallen off Scott Solosky, and Scott obviously pretty high on confidence, being a finalist in the Virtual Sim Racing Showdown that was held at Sydney Motorsports Park on the weekend, which is where Fonty, Bo and myself were all weekend, and it was a really fantastic weekend for motorsport, for esports, and also for all of the team at iRacing and V8s Online as well. So it was really good to see Scott down there, as well as a couple of other drivers who you will probably see fairly frequently on the V8s Online and iRacing Esports Network as well. But Corey Preston's been falling off a little bit too. He's just kind of in no man's land in 5th position at the moment. He's got Ross Rizzo a fair bit behind him, and Brett Loxton's still been plugging away, but falling off from Brady Myers. He's actually lost 6 seconds back to Brady, and it was interesting because they were pretty much only about a second apart, if not less, when they came out of the pits.
Yeah, they were. So it's all very close stuff as Andrew Zackerson there with Jeremiah Morton into turn number 2. So close racing throughout the field at the moment. But you're definitely right, as actually also Jason Bentz now closing back up to Scott Soslowski as well. So Soslowski, he was very quick in the Porsche yesterday. Going to be quick in a V8 Supercar today. And Bentz come back a little bit and just keeping the pressure on. So we'll see how this battle goes in the next few laps. Of course, 2 very differently set up teams in terms of how they operate, in terms of how they go about setups as well. So interesting to see the strengths and weaknesses of these 2 cars. And Bentz, he's clearly got back on form. He was down the 209.5s at one point, back into the low 208s. And that's not going to help the lap times though, as he locks up in the Forest Elbow. That's the worst place to do it, because you're just going to lose the speed all the way down this long straight. And you can see on board now, you can see there the ASM car in front just pulling away just a little bit as we go over the rise on Conrod Straight. So Jason Bentz, he's had some good laps, he's had some bad laps. He's going to have to put this one down to a bad lap and hope the next 5 are all good laps. Sam Blacklock does the fastest lap for the cars on track at the moment. So he's beginning to apply the pressure a bit more, open the gap to 9/10 of a second. And Cooper Webster just beginning to struggle a bit to hold on to the Trans-Tasman racing car, as Brady Myers just lurking in the background as well. Of course, he's going to have to do something special if he's going to take second place away from anyone, or even go for this race win. But he was very quick last time around, as well as Chris D'Angelo is going to go side by side on Leon Tander into the chase, and that's another position there for the driver of Chris D'Angelo. He's had a pretty good race as well, so he's made his way through from 28th in the grid all the way to 19th. And Leon Tander, of course, he would have had a much better race if it weren't for that lap 1 incident, which involved a handful of cars as well, including Riley Blythe and Brian Borg as well. And Leon Tander's going to have a lot more nightmares going on through the final corner with a big slide, and lucky to hold on to it as well. But out front, the gap out to a second now. So for Cooper Webster, this is critical time, and at the moment he's not responding to the pressure that Blacklock is applying, and this is what he has to do. He really has to get closer now, because if he loses that draft with the pace Blacklock has over the top of the hill, it might all just be a little bit too little, a little bit too late.
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well, when you've been following a car and 2 cars have been together for such a long period of the race. I mean, these guys have been basically sitting there or thereabouts within half a second of each other for the last 28 laps, and we're now an hour into this race, so they have just been absolutely locked into each other, and this is the furthest that they have been apart, and we really are coming into the dying stages. Just 3.5 laps to go, and Cooper Webster, once you kind of get that 1 second margin, it can start to feel like it's all starting to just fall away from you. If he does fall outside that kind of 1.1 1.2 second margin, it could just be all over for Cooper Webster. So he's gonna have to put in a really solid effort here to try and get himself back up onto Sam Blacklock, because as he said, he has been the man over and down the mountain to beat. But notice as well, Mario Vlasic has caught up to Adam Hyland and Jamie McKnight after getting past Chris Coxhead a few laps ago. He's been progressing himself forward, and just had a bit of a go into turn 2 the last time around on Adam Hyland. So looking strong is Mario Vlasic for the last half and the last few laps of this race. So we'll see if he's able to do anything, as Jamie McKnight just takes a little bit too much curb at Murray's corner there, getting the car up on 2 wheels, which is not always the worst thing, but it's not all that great when you really want to be applying the traction. It's much better to apply traction with 2 wheels rather than 1. But the Mean Machine lurking ever closer to the back of that car of Jamie McKnight, and Mario Vlasic just not quite getting the run that he had the last time around. All the cars just sitting in the middle of the track there, and then just pulling over at the very last moment just to try and keep in the slipstream of their opponents. And Mario Vlasic coming very crossed up as he came into Quarry Bend there, but managing to keep it all on track. He's going to have to really close up on these guys. You can see the pressure starting to get to McKnight that Adam Hyland is applying, just locking up as he came in through the cutting there. But Jamie's looked particularly strong coming up and down the mountain, much like Blacklock, although Blacklock has had significantly more pace than all the guys in this pack throughout that race. So with only 2 and a bit laps to go, Jamie McKnight should be able to hold on to this position if he can just park himself in the right places and also get a good exit, in particular out of Forest Elbow and out of Hell Corner as well. Those are the 2 real critical places for all of these drivers to get right, to make sure that they're not too susceptible for an attack.
Yeah, well, McKnight's just locking up a little bit of everywhere, is struggling to get the anchors on at the moment in that ERT car. So late in the race, it's not going well for the ERT cars. The gap out front has expanded dramatically to 1.7 seconds. So a Blacklock looking good out front for this race winner. McKnight not looking too amazing at the moment for position number 11. As Adam Hyland in the Mean Machine just gets closer and closer and closer. And McKnight, well, it's pretty much his standard braking technique now, locking up into corners and struggling just a little bit. We'll see how he approaches this final corner. If he's a little bit more cautious with how much more curb he uses, or if he's willing just to attack it, but indeed doesn't even touch the curb on my screen, but he does touch the exit curb, which lights him up in a wheel spin and struggling for exit speed as well. So Highland will get closer and closer, and that's going to be hurting McKnight quite a lot because we have quite a long straight coming up, and it's uphill too, which means the slipstream is going to be all the more powerful. But Highland just struggled a bit with power as well there, so might not have a shot at turn number 2, but maybe we'll have a shot with 2 to go, as we are currently with 3 laps left on the clock. And Kozlowski is another driver who's trying to make a move at the moment. He's got Jason Bence in front, so these two have changed positions at the moment, but Bence is struggling for all kinds of traction. He had nothing coming out of the cutting, and Kozlowski immediately under the rear wing as they head over the top of the hill. Now plummet down a little bit right out to the Eddie Head signage on the right. Now out to the wall on the right again, and that was a little bit too touch and go for Jason Bence. Probably wanted to leave a bit more margin to the curbs on the outside, as they can be pretty vicious if you do touch them slightly wrong. The wrong angle, they can snap the car violently sideways. And we even saw in, I think it might have been qualifying or even early in the Scots 1000, Jared Fulsell and Josh Muggleton's car having a huge moment over the top of the hill and barely being able to save it. Jason Bence not making Forest Elbow again, and that's a nightmare for him because Kozlowski nailed it. Great run out of the final Forest Elbow complex for him. Down the Conrod straight, right underneath now, and he'll look to the inside at the chase, which is what he needs to do. Needs to clear Bence pretty early, because if Bence can hold it around the outside, he will have the inside for the chase. But Kozlowski does indeed get it done before they get on the anchors. So good move there, and another change of position between these two. At the rate they've been going at, there's every chance it's changing again as Kozlowski slides his way out of the chase. Yeah,
I think Jason Bence, I mean, he's only on 1 lap older tyres than Kozlowski, but really been using those rear tyres quite significantly. I think he might have just overheated them slightly, as he just does start to drop off the back of Scott Kozlowski a tiny bit. But the gap between Webster and Blacklock has been extending lap after lap, and they are now on the second last lap. Brady Myers hasn't been able to do anything either. He's been falling off even more dramatically over the last few laps, and Sam's actually been starting to pick up the pace a little bit with that little bit of fresh air, as Cooper Webster actually just touched the wall as he was coming up through Sulman Park there. So really trying to push that ERT machine to the absolute limit, and he just ran out of road a tiny bit. Luckily for him, he didn't break any of his suspension there, didn't break any Watts linkages, and that car is still managing to go on strong. Maybe a tiny bit of a scrape mark down the side of that ERT machine, but for the most part, relatively unscathed. Unfortunately for him though, there is a big gap, and you can see it. Can't even see him over the top of the hill now as he comes over the Mitsubishi Fuso bridge, and Blacklock has just absolutely rocketed away. And as we said earlier, you know, the experience of having that championship under his belt, having been in the lead for so many races and managing to hold on and having the willpower to get through all that pressure is one of those things that has definitely helped Sam Blacklock as he now starts the final lap around the historic Mount Panorama circuit. And he will be very pleased with a win around here. Obviously not having the best run yesterday, still a decent performance, but not on the top step, which is where you always want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. You always want to be on the top. You always want to be fighting for the glory. But at the moment, one driver that won't be fighting for the glory is Scott Kozlowski and Jason Bence. They continue to scrap as we head to 1 lap to go for those guys. And Bence is still looking very threatening. He had a huge look heading into the chase, but wasn't able to get any kind of overlap. So no way through as they make their way now up Mountain Straight and see what they can do. And 11th, 12th, and 13th is not over, as well as McKnight continues to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle for the cars behind, but probably not close enough. As Kozlowski and Bence head their way into turn number 2. Bence looks to the inside, can't do it. Both dancing with the brakes as late as you dare. They were dancing with danger, and somehow they've both escaped. Kozlowski sideways on the exit as well, but they're getting a little bit racy here, and I can imagine down Conrod Straight, this is going to be a battle to watch. Who's going to get the slipstream? Who's going to have the guts to go as late as they dare into the chase? And if they're willing to throw it all over into the grass and throw away what could be 8th place in this Monday night official V8 Supercar Series race, which is being led by Sam Blacklock as he makes his way for the final time down Conrad Straight, but Soslowski and Benz still fighting away, and Soslowski has got a very good run at the moment, got the margin he needs, and he might just be able to hold onto this one and not have any pressure into the chase as Benz gets a bit sideways before the dipper. But heading into the final few corners, it's car number 3. He started P2, but it might just be first place for Sam Blacklock as he has just one corner between him and domination. He won round 1. He might just take round number 2 as well after an hour and 8 minutes of racing for the second time in Season 4 of 2018. Sam Blacklock for Trans-Tasman Racing wins here at Mount Panorama. Cooper Webster put up a fantastic fight and will hold on to the P number 2, and Brady Myers rounds out your podium. And Loxton and Preston will come home in the top 5. Rizzo closed up quite a lot in the end, and so did Griffin Gardner, but it wasn't enough. Scott Soslowski is likely to hold on to this spot at the moment. Ben's just not quite got enough, but the battle at the moment could be all on Jamie McKnight, who continues to have a lot of pressure from behind from Adam Hyland. How risky are they going to get into the final corner? Hyland a lot later on the brakes, but doesn't get close enough. And Vlasic might not have enough speed to get the move done through the final few corners. See if there aren't any other close battles. Jeremiah Morton and Chris Coxhead across the line for 14th and 15th place. Great job from them. Andrew Zackerson in 16th after what was a tough race for him. And it looks like we just had the last few cars coming across the line, including Leon Tander, who's a little bit off the pace, but he has had an extremely tough race here at Mount Panorama. After the first lap, of course, it's a great effort to see him at least finish this race, which so many haven't. Of course, we had 29 cars start this race, and only 20 are going to bring it home on the lead lap. And the final of those will be David Miller, who has just one corner to go as well. So for David Miller, he still gets the top 20 out of it. He qualified last, so 20th place is well and truly an improvement, but it really was a great race. And there was a little bit of tension in the chat as well. So a lot of drivers after 32 laps are getting a little bit frustrated with one another. And of course, that does happen in a series as competitive as this, Zach. It does get feisty at times, and the tempers do flare from time to time.
Yeah, well, I know that, everyone's going to have their own opinion about things that happen and who did what and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, that's kind of a big part of motorsport, and people wouldn't tune in, I guess, if there wasn't a little bit of drama and people didn't have varying opinions, and if everyone went for the same person, there wouldn't be a whole lot really to watch, and there'd be very few people getting excited if that one person lost. So good to see people having varying differences of opinion, because it's not always not everyone is always right. So we'll leave those guys to sort it all out between themselves. But we don't want to take away definitely from Sam Blacklock. We'll get your results up for you now on screen, who did a fantastic job having to duel away with Cooper Webster for 32 laps and managing to just pull away, resisting, succumbing to all of that pressure and taking away the race. Cooper Webster did come home in position number 2 after qualifying on pole and putting in a valiant effort, but unfortunately not enough to take the top step today. And Brady Myers, who had a little bit of a quiet race, getting close to the leaders, falling back off and maintaining that position for the final spot on the podium. Brett Loxton as well, after a busy start, got a little bit quiet in the middle of the race there and came home in 4th position. Same for Corey Preston in 5th. Ross Rizzo came home in 6th position, playing the strategy to his advantage and moving himself up 4 positions from his starting spot. Griffin Gardner finished in 7th position, with Scott Zalowski making a few passes through that race and getting himself up into 8th position. Jason Bentz fighting his way on towards the very end, but only coming home in 9th. And Michael Cracknell moving his way through the grid quite massively, started P19 and took out the final spot in the top 10.
Making his way up 14 spots in the race would be Jamie Knight. Comes home in P number 11 with Adam Hyland putting pressure all the way to the checkered flag, trying to get that spot, but couldn't do it in the end. And Mario Vlasic was right in there as well. Chris Coxhead and Jeremiah Morton were separated by less than a second over the line, but they would have to settle for 14th and 15th with Andrew Zackerson in 16th. Scott Lanak would come home in P17 after a difficult race for himself. Chris D'Angelo in 18th, Leon Tander in 19th, and 20th would be David Miller, the last of our classified finishers.
And then we had Nico Nyman in 1 lap down. Not sure if he got lapped there on pace or if he had a bit of an issue throughout the race. Jordan Ross, 14 laps down. Greg Sharp, 20 laps down after having an unfortunate incident and absolutely destroying that Holden Commodore of his. That would have been an expensive reshell in real life. Lucky he can just press on track for the next race. And Thomas McMillan obviously blew his engine after doing a really good job working his way up into 4th position. Emily Jones just managing to scrape the wall and unfortunately taking Thomas Hins with her 25 laps ago. And Riley Blythe and Brian Borg having a bit of a biff on lap number 2 in this race. They both had to come into the pits with terminal damage, and David J. Lord rounded out the field in P29 at 31 laps down.
Well, there we go. Another brilliant race at Mount Panorama. And it always seems to throw a little bit of action, a little bit of drama when you do come here in the Monday night official series. But that's us done for the Monday. We'll be back on Wednesday because we have the Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australasia. And Zach, we're going to Alton Park.
Yeah, Alton Park's a fun little track. I think there's been some really, really good racing throughout that series. There's obviously been a balance of performance adjustment from iRacing halfway through that series. So it will be interesting to see how the competitors are able to manage the new pace in their cars. But always a fantastic series to watch and be a part of as well.
Yep, absolutely. And just in case you didn't have enough Bathurst on Friday night, we have the LeBlanc Australian Online Supercar Series. It's round 8, and once again, they're going to the mountain in these V8 Supercars for the Bathurst 150. And then on Sunday, our final broadcast for the week before we get back for the Monday night series. But on Sunday, it's the International Majors Series. It's round number 12. It's the Japanese Grand Prix, 53 laps at the gorgeous Suzuka Grand Prix circuit in the very, very tough to drive McLaren MP430. Be sure to sign up for that one if you have not already. Should be a great race in some of the most high downforce cars you could ever imagine. But then, of course, we do have the Monday night V8 Supercar Series. And, well, in case you didn't have enough Alton Park, we're going there next. Alton Park International, 50% fuel restriction, so fuel will be tight. But we're a little bit tight on time at the moment. So from behalf of the entire team, Zach Hanlon and Scott Fountain, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.